More now on Syria, and a UN-backed peace plan is in danger of failing after the Syrian government demanded the opposition disarm and renounce attacks. Well, let's cross live now to Birmingham and speak to Abdulwahab Omar. He's a UK-based Syrian opposition activist. Thank you very much for coming on the programme this lunchtime. Why can't you give the Syrian government these written guarantees that it's asking for?
It's not a case of not giving the guarantees, Fiona. It's a case of trust. It is not the Free Syrian Army that has murdered 10,000 people so far. It is not the FSA that has murdered the foreign journalists that were in Bab Amr only a few months ago. It is, if we were to give an analogy, it's like David and Goliath asking David to give up his slingshot, asking the FSA to disarm. By nature, they're very lightly armed. They do not pose any direct threat to the military machine of Assad, and it is an absurd request by the regime. It is simply trying to buy time and nothing more.
Is it not a case, though, that you really don't want to give them what they're asking for, to talk to them, because you simply want the regime to go? You don't just want a ceasefire and then they still sit there?
I think if we look at this theme a little bit more carefully, what we are actually talking about, we are expecting a regime that has killed so many people, a regime that has crimes against humanity hanging around its neck, to magically transform into a democratic one. This is obviously not going to happen. This is why the opposition, after over a year right now of trying to remove the regime in peaceful manner, has decided that the remaining of the regime in power will not lead to anything other than bloodshed.
And of course, as we've been hearing this morning, this violence is still going on in Syria and also over the border in Turkey.
Very much so. It shows how the extent that the Bashar al-Assad regime is prepared to go. Only, we're a day or two before the actual ceasefire is supposed to commence, and we have seen northern Aleppo and Idlib, some horrendous massacres taking place, culminating to the day of seeing the firing entering into Syria, into Turkish territory.
China this morning is urging both sides to stick to the original deal.
The Free Syrian Army has not actually conducted any attacks against any of the military checkpoints or anything like this. It is trying to comment, but it will not stop defending civilians when civilians are under threat.
And the Russians as well also playing a very big part in this. They've signed up to the original plan.
Well, the Russians have got a lot of explaining to do. They supported this plan. They were the ones that were advocating this degree of diplomacy with the Assad regime, and it is now the Assad regime letting them down. It's the Assad regime which, a day before the actual ceasefire, is changing the terms, it's changing the conditions. So the only person that can actually, the only country, sorry, that can rescue this peace plan right now are the Russians, and it is now time to see whether they're prepared to do something.
So the Russians have to put their money where their mouths are, basically?
Very much. They're the only nation right now, together with Iran, that have some degree of leverage with the Syrian regime, and they're the only ones that can turn this around, if turning it around is what they want to do.
Where do you think this is going to go from here? I mean, we're meant to see this ceasefire from tomorrow, and then 48 hours later everything should be calm. It obviously isn't going to happen at this rate.
Let's be very clear. The entire spectrum of the opposition was sceptical at best with this plan. This was the third such plan that we had in place. It wasn't the first or the second. What we are seeing right now is preparing to the next phase, and the next phase is down to the international community to now decide what they can do to actually protect the civilians. We are seeing time and time again that negotiations with Assad do not work. And why would they work when Assad has got no threat? Why would a dictator stop killing when nobody's giving him an what if or an or else scenario? Nobody's telling that unless he abides, he will suffer from consequences. And the only people that can give that threat are the international community.
Abdulwahab Omar, we're grateful for your time this lunchtime. Thank you very much.